welcome today Becca Stevens and two of her staffers, her executive assistant, Kristen Becca, and her communications and training assistant, Isabella Yandel. She might still be out there. Well, don't be sure to go see them at the Thistle Farms table out there. They have some lovely things that you can purchase to support the ministry of Magdalene House in Thistle Farms. All right, but Becca Stevens is a speaker, social entrepreneur, author, Episcopal priest, and the founder and president of Thistle Farms. She's established 10 justice initiatives and raised over $65 million in funding. Stevens leads an important conversation across the country through speaking, advocating, preaching, and writing. Now, Becca Stevens caught my attention about a decade ago when she showed up at a missions conference in Mobile, Alabama. I had my exhibitor's booth for a home repair ministry I had just helped start, and these delightful women from a place called Thistle Farms. They showed up selling these lotions and potions, and y'all, it smelled like heaven. Just notice how good it started to smell in here with the purchases that you made. I couldn't figure out why someone was there selling something. But later that day, Stevens gave the keynote address. She described the work of Magdalene House as a place for women who have been trafficked, as a place for them to heal. And Thistle Farms is a way for those women to break the cycles of poverty and gain confidence and a path to independence. It forever changed the way that I saw justice ministry and understood healing and serving and what it meant to be the church. I went home and I read pretty much all of her books. So I hope that your library grows today too. I recommend you use Snake Oil and Funeral for a Stranger. Stevens founded Thistle Farms in 1997 with a single home for survivors of human trafficking and addiction, and it lives in the reality that healing is hard work, and love is the greatest force for change in the universe. Now, almost 25 years later, Thistle Farms is a global movement for women's freedom. Today, the Nashville flagship includes a residential program that serves as a national model for women's recovery, and 3 social justice enterprises that provide jobs to survivors, amounting to $4 million in earned income last year. Stevens also developed the Thistle National Network to provide tools, workshops, and conferences to support young organizations wanting to follow this holistic model of recovery. There are now 92 organizations providing over 500 beds to survivors in its network. She also created the Thistle Farms Global Shared Trade, which supports 1,400 artisans through 39 partners in 21 countries. Stevens' many awards includes a CNN Hero, White House Champion for Change, Tennessee Human Rights Outstanding Service Award, and many more. Becca attended the University of the South and Vanderbilt Divinity School, receiving alumni distinction awards from both. Becca describes her life as an average-sized glass overflowing with love. She's practical and crafty. She's spent her life inspiring communities to organize and act with love. She's married to Grammy-winning and Hall of Fame songwriter Marcus Hammond, and they have raised 3 sons who are all artists in their own right. So their home is filled with music, paintings, designs, and dogs. Please welcome Becca Stevens.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see old friends. I've seen so many folks. This is like my 3rd time to be in the diocese, so I'm super happy to be back, and I'm always grateful for the hospitality that folks show. You guys have almost sold us out, so I don't really even need to talk today. But the few things we have left, we're going to hit you with hard, because this is how we love and serve all the women that are back home doing this work and around the country doing this work. I always am so grateful to travel with great people, and Kristen's going to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about our raffle today.
Hi everyone! Oh my gosh, y'all look so good out there, really. So grateful for all of your purchases. I know not everyone was able to receive our proper raffle card, so what we invite you and welcome you to do is to fill out your name and your email on one of the many sticky notes on your table, and we will go around and we will collect this. So if you did not get a chance to fill out a raffle card already, please fill out your information on a sticky note, and we will go around and collect them, and then at the end we will give away a moringa tea and a candle to 2 lucky winners. And I'm Kristen. I'm a 2015 graduate of the Thistle Farms residential program, and it is an honor to be with all of you here today.
Kristen organizes all these events, and this year she is celebrating 10 years clean in all the streets. She is amazing. And right when we came to the diocese, the very first thing is your kind, amazing, hospitable bishop took us to have, just that Gulf Coast feel, to take us to Thai food last night. We were going, this is awesome. We can't get that in Nashville. This is my story, this is my song, is the perfect theme for me. I'm a storyteller, I'm married to a songwriter. I came as a beggar into this work and into the church. I needed to believe love heals so bad. My story that I carried with me was a story really of a lot of brokenness and trauma, including the death of my Episcopal priest father. He was killed in a vehicular homicide by a drunk driver when I was 5, and my mom, who was 35, raised 5 kids on love. And what happened to me happens to so many people. When you get one trauma or one thing happening in your life, this is a story shared by many people in this room whose hearts I don't believe are broken, but are broken open in this story. And somebody who was one of the vestry members who was helping our family after the death of my dad was the first abuser in my life, sexual abuse starting in the church. And so my story is one of longing for the church to be a healing place, of longing for communities to be safe. And so even though I majored in math at Sewanee, I went to divinity school at Vanderbilt and ran into my husband the very first week we were there. My husband of 35 years now. And, he would say that, song is really a distilled story told with music. And it's the search for that, and our search for continuing to make what we believe is a love story with our lives. And I hope you see that what you're doing on your journey in your faith is your love story. It's this love letter we are writing to God. And it takes our whole life to complete it, and it has different chapters. I don't know about you, but for me, in COVID, one of the things I did is I cleaned out stuff. Did y'all clean out drawers that you hadn't seen in decades? I've been living in my house for 27 years, and I promise you there are places, when we moved in, I put stuff in the basement, never to see it again. And I was kicked off the road during COVID, and so went down into that dark dungeon, and I found love letters I had written to my husband while we were at divinity school. We'd been dating 6 months. I was 24 years old. And I promise you, one of the first letters I opened, it starts with, "Dear Marcus, we've been through so much." Thank God our love stories and our lives grow and change, that we get to a point where we can say we have been through so much. That we get to a place where that story moves and changes with us as we want to be relevant and practical and idealist. One of my heroes in this whole world of justice work has always been Dorothy Day, who started the Catholic Worker Movement. She started as an activist. She was in the Depression and Hell's Kitchen. She started soup, she started working, and her love story was this ongoing journey of how to serve those in her community. Her autobiography is called The Long Loneliness. That part of her love story and part of our love story when we are following this is there are seasons of loneliness and lostness and desert. And that's why that the Spirit drives us into those spaces to find where that love is, where we remember, where we meet our temptations, where we're willing to seek oases. Do you say oases? How do you say it? Oases. I said it right. Oh my gosh. Isn't it hard being from the South? Like, how do you say that word anyway? Me, Mom? Her last chapter in her autobiography says, "My work now is prayer." That her love story had moved from activism into this life of prayer, and seeing that as a way to continue this story that all of us in our lives get to keep writing, keep moving. And don't you love the love story of Nicodemus? The bishop spoke so beautifully about him this morning, about how he too came as a beggar, seeking. And I'm a huge believer in the powerful nature of begging and the deep spirituality of begging. A church without beggars is a museum. We come to the church with our hands out, hoping for a bit of bread that can feed us. It is a beautiful place to get back to gratitude. It's a beautiful place to say, I can keep writing this story. I need it. I need to believe love heals in this story. Nicodemus comes as a beggar in the middle of the night, whispering his fears. I need you. And then, when Jesus appears before the Sanhedrin, he becomes a defender. Isn't that a beautiful part of the love story? That sense of I'm coming as a good host or a hero into this space to proclaim my love in my words, but in also my deeds. St. Francis, what? Preach love, use words when you have to. It is this idea that when you and I are in that space where we get to be together, that we can, by our witness and our actions, hold each other up, defend each other from fear, from danger. You know, community is not the only the oldest entity the world knows for healing. It's also the safest entity. When we come together to do that work at Thistle Farms, I've come to believe over 25 years that my job is not to do any kind of heroic work. That would be exhausting and ridiculous. Our job as the church is to set a table, to be good hosts, and people are the hero of their own story. That they come in and we provide this, we defend, we carve out a space where healing can happen. And then at the end of the story of Nicodemus, when he comes back in for the third time in John's gospel, he's moved from beggar and defender to beloved. He performs one of the most intimate acts in all the gospel, taking the naked body of Jesus down from the cross and anointing him, what does it say, 100 pounds of herbs and oils. Which is what love carries us into these messy, intimate, long, enduring stories. Where ultimately we bury one another. When you're saying, I have this profound moment of burying a friend whom I have loved, and that love story continues in our grief and in our honor. Dorothy Day, with Nicodemus, with all of us together, we are writing a love story. And that love story is not finished until the end. Our love story is steeped in the messiness, in the intimacy. And what I gained early on in this ministry at Thistle Farms, which is my love story. I mean, shoot, we print Love Heals on everything we sell. I came early on to understand that if I was trying to do a love story, I surely had to be concerned about the economic well-being of the people I was serving. People were doing heroic work. They were making restitution with the courts, with their families. They were doing the hard work of recovery and looking at their credit history and going to therapists and getting meds straight and getting teeth put in. Really hard stuff. But they were still dirt poor, and as long as we are part of a community that still keeps people in poverty, in that institutional idea of poverty, then they're part of the violence and vulnerability that poverty comes with. And so that's why we started creating products and starting Justice Enterprises. And I call it Justice Enterprise on purpose, by the way. I don't say social enterprise. I think of social enterprise as this huge kind of sector of the marketplace where there is some social good that comes out of it, which is beautiful. But Justice Enterprise, think of it as more of a subset, where the workforce is the mission. And what happens when the workforce is the mission, and we're doing this as part of our love story, this economic well-being, you're a mission with a business, not a business with a mission. And because you're a mission with a business that's not afraid to go in the marketplace and see what it is that love will bear, when you do that, there's extra costs. The workforce itself is super expensive, and just the training, and then how you supply it, and how, like, at Thistle Farms, because we sell almost nothing in the lean months of summer, we don't reduce our workforce, we eat that cost. It's about justice, and it comes with a higher cost, and our shared responsibility and love bears that cost. So when we started, I had been to divinity school. I didn't know, anything about running a business. And do I now? I don't know if I do now or not, because I've been kicked out of so many things that I don't even really know what happens. We have a CEO, we have a CFO, we have all these people, and they say, what do you think? And I know they've already decided. I actually had a nightmare last night where they brought a product that I couldn't stand and asked me what I thought, and I was like, this is awful. It had like red dye in it, like my worst nightmare. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I've been to divinity school, so I was like, we'll make candles, body bombs, and oil. And we'll name them after biblical characters. It'll be this great thing. So we made this body bomb, and it was called the Balm of Gilead. And the very, very first commercial sale I ever had was one of the very first Episcopal conferences in North Carolina. It was Bishop Curry was the head of the Diocese of North Carolina, and he had a conference at Canoga, and I drove from Nashville, and he was preaching up there to everybody who was trying to figure out how is the church going to respond to HIV/AIDS in our communities in loving ways. And he kept saying, is there a balm of Gilead? And I was like, yes, there is. And you can have it for $7.99. And our beloved presiding bishop bought one for everyone at the conference. And it was so many that I had to get somebody to drive from Nashville to Canoga to bring another 200. And we were like, this is it. We're done. We don't ever have to worry about sales again. And we made healing oils. There's 425 scriptures about healing oils in the Bible. Y'all knew that, right? First day of creation, there's this vision. And in the vision, there's a garden. In the middle of the garden, there's the tree of life. And then you flip it over to the very last page of Scripture. And there's the vision of the kingdom with the city How radical would it be to take that idea of lavishness that we have in our worship, that we have in our oils, and apply that into our work of justice, where we build shelters like cathedrals, and people come from all over to see it and to be inspired and to be community again. We tried it at Thistle Farms first in 2005. We built a house in Nashville. We got the land donated, the architecture donated, so the whole building looks like a butterfly. We spent about $1 million on construction, invited 8 women in. And by the way, small communities of women are the best ROI, return on investment, you get. It is not warehousing people, it's reminding people of sanctuary and home. They never have to go back out to the streets again, and they change laws, they change communities, they change systems, they change language. 8 women came in, graduated 2 years later. All of that happened. We did the math on it, and you can house 8 women in $1 million building for half the cost it is to keep that same number of women in prison. We are willing to invest more than $50,000 a year per woman to keep them in jail. All the statistics, all the data in the world shows if we invest in women, we heal communities. And when we rape women, we kill communities. Now, one of the things I know about love stories is that they are long. Those stories take a long time to live out, which is beautiful. One of the very first candle makers we ever had at Thistle Farms was a woman named Ty. And she, like so many women, carried a story where that rape and abuse started way too early and trafficking started way too early. The way she tells it is she would hide from her stepfather when she was in middle school, and she wasn't always successful. And then by the time she was 16 and being trafficked, she was trying to get in and out of cars that were safe, and she wasn't always successful. And she was a part of a sting where every time she was running drugs and prostituting with a John, it was like 6 or 5, I guess it was 5 that day. Each one was prosecuted as a separate felony. So she went away for years and years to serve her time. And she came to us, and she became the candle maker. And being a candle maker at Thistle Farms is huge. It is the light. Every week we say, we light this candle for the woman on the streets and the woman trying to find her way home. We have said that every week. We light this candle for the woman on the street and the woman trying to find her way home. To be the light. Sometimes I think, in my fancy imagination, if Jesus was here, he wouldn't say, light your lamp and put it on the hillside. He would definitely say, light your Thistle Farms candle. We all can have our fantasies. It's not a big deal. But the idea that we light these candles for others. So to be the candle maker, it's the #1 product. It's the #1 way that we continue to share the message. It is an evangelical tool. 70% of all the products we sell are gifts. So you buy this, you give it to someone so that they know that you're about love and justice. Now you've shared the story again. It is an amazing evangelical tool. So Ty stays 1.5 years. She does amazing work. She's working on her recovery. She's making connections with her family again. She's making candles. And, by the way, paying taxes, costing the state nothing. But she had one more pending charge. We went back to court, and the court said, in spite of all the, I thought, good testimony we gave, 14 years. You go back to prison for 14 more years. So she left candle making and went to sit in prison in timeout. It took about 3 years to get her, 3 years and some change, to get her out again with some amazing attorneys. God bless everybody who does pro bono attorney work. Attorneys, advocates, they got her out. And the next day, she walked back into the candle studio and started pouring candles. This is an important chapter for me in her and my love story. Try to imagine you've been sitting for no good reason for 3 years in timeout in a cell. And that you come out and you are still going to be a light for people in this world. I was like, Ty, how are you doing it? How are you not so mad that somebody arbitrarily set when justice was going to start for you? Where were they when you were 11 and 12? Where was I? And how you just come back in here and keep going. And she said, I need this as much as anybody. I need community, and you guys didn't abandon me, and I will not abandon you. That is a love story. So she goes and she comes back and she makes candles. Then she ends up being the manufacturing director. Everything you see out there, Ty's manufacturing director. She's trained another 100 women who have come after her in that department. She wrote me last week and she said, Becca, by the way, I'm off parole this week. 10 years on parole. And the first place I'm going is the passport office. Because I want to help continue to shine the light all over the world. That's a love story. That's one that, she can teach a master's degree in forgiveness and light and love. Being a part of a love story in this world is not in spite of the polarizing politics we're going through, the uncertain economics and the destabilizing violence and wars. It is not in spite of that we have a love story. It is in response to. Saying we are writing our love letter, living our life story as a love story is defiant. It's beautifully defiant. It's inspiring to people. It's hopeful to people. People want to be a part of a story of love. I believe that. And so to claim it and to live into it is huge. One of my favorite love stories that I've gotten to be a part of is the Moringa Madres, who named themselves Moringa Madres in Mexico. All homeless women. The head of it is a woman named Gisela, who was deported when she was 13 years old from Berkeley. So her English is much better than mine. Went to Mexico, was on the streets, was actually kidnapped by the cartel. She and several of her friends were going to get food every week at this church. And the church called me because one of the people at the church was retired from Nashville, Tennessee, and said, do you think we could do something down here that can grow moringa? And I said, well, sure, what's moringa? Turned the Moringa Madres had housing. They had their children back. They were working hard. They were healing from unspeakable violence. Truly, I believe it is unspeakable sometimes. Even if you want to be able to speak about it, it's hard to even understand it. How people can be so inhumane to one another. Doesn't it seem sometimes like, what? How? Why? Who? So this morning, Gisela sends me a video. This is what my favorite, she sent it to me this morning. And the video is her and the newest Moringa Madre. And by the way, the Moringa Madres were renting land and they bought it. They own the land and they own the trees. This brand new Moringa Madre, Gisela translated it for me. And what she wanted was to say this. I want you to know that because of the Moringa, I have graduated high school. And I have saved enough money to start school to be a nurse. And she was so proud. She's out of the ditch in a beautiful way with the help of a lot of people who understand in a love story things you can translate. You can translate healing oils into houses. You can translate tea into education. This is the beauty. It's this universal language of love that you can translate. That we don't have to even speak the same language because love is its own language. And when we are buying into it with one another, for one another, with one another, walking alongside one another, breaking bread together, we get the gift of what love is. So this love story is a long time like Ty. This love story is defiant like Gisela. And this love story is, I think, the best way for us to really live into our faith. One thing I think, besides the idea of being lavish that we've missed out on in justice, is that somehow we put this pressure on ourselves that we have to be inspired to do justice work. Who made that up? Like where you feel like you have to be inspired to do it. That is not written anywhere. That is part of the journey of faith. Everybody is exhausted and worn out. Big deal. Everybody's busy. That is just the truth. I mean, I can get busy knitting like nobody's business. Y'all saw me probably in the back corner knitting like crazy because I have this thing in my head that I have to get 10 sweaters done. I'm very busy with that. We can get busy. But what I love is that we don't do that in other areas of our lives. And so in this work of church and not-for-profit work for the sake of justice and community, we can let that go. So like in other words, no one says to a dairy farmer, 4 a.m, raining outside, hey, are you inspired to go milk that cow? No. Cow needs milking. Who else is going to do it, right? So we do. We're disciples. That's just what we do. The harvest is plenty, the laborers are few. And what I've learned in this work too is, by the way, no one cares if you're inspired. Even if they're worried about their own inspiration. Like, how many priests here have ever walked into a church one morning, Sunday morning, and go, you know what, I am just not feeling it today. I read the gospel, nothing. And then the congregation goes, don't worry about it. We got this. You sit down and relax. And we'll give you a raise. No, doesn't happen. Kids don't do it. They don't care if you're inspired to feed them. No one does it. But I will say to you, if you're feeling particularly uninspired on this journey work, to live your life as a beautiful love story, one thing you shouldn't do is go to Nebraska in November. If you're feeling the greatness in your part of the love story right now, if you are in the desert with our Lord, by the way, if you're in a space of, I don't know how long I can do this, you're in good company. But when that comes over you and then you put yourself into one of those spaces like Nebraska in November where everything feels gray, the sky is gray, the trees are gray, the buildings are gray, everything. It's super hard. But I did what I needed to do, what I get paid to do. I showed up and I preached at the cathedral, talked to the foundations, met with the board for the new place they were starting, Magdalene, Omaha, that's doing beautiful work, and started Thistle Lights, their justice enterprise. Did it all, got back on a plane, and like I always get to do, Kristen, I love you and admire you so much for how you go on the road and do all of this work. I was traveling with a woman named Sophia who had never flown before. She had run away from her foster home in 6th grade, where she had endured so much and spent her teenage years on the streets and detention centers till we do what we do, and we graduated her to prison at 18. And so she was super excited to fly to Nebraska in November and was not on my same train of depression. And 8 o'clock Sunday night, we take off, and I'm feeling sorry for myself, but I'm feeling sorry for myself like this because she'd never flown. She didn't understand the cardinal rule of do not cross the armrest. And then I realized she pushed me all the way, and she was looking out the window, and she was taking photos. We were about 20,000 feet up, and it was stunning. It was a super moon. The moon was halo. And all the grayness of the clouds were gone. Deep hues and deep, stunning blues. And with her head on my shoulder, still looking out, she says, I didn't know there was a sky above the clouds. Can you imagine? No. Because you're part of a church that says imagine. You're part of a church that says imagine the vast expanse of interstellar space. The sun, the planets in their courses. This fragile earth, our island home, we've always been invited to imagine something bigger. But why would she? She's known the inside of prison walls, the underside of bridges, the short side of justice, the back side of anger. She had never seen the top side of the cloud. And sometimes it takes a whole community in love to help people see the gray, beyond the gray. And I looked at Sophia and I was like, oh my God, I'm good for another 5 years, I swear. I forget we're doing this, not because we feel like it. We're doing this to help each other remember there's something beyond the grave. That we walk out of the desert. That we are making our way towards Jerusalem in our love story. Your love story has been through so much. But how far we have to go. And so my call for us as we are remembering this is my story and this is my song is to not be afraid of the messiness of healing. When I think of the woman pouring oils over Jesus' feet, I am very clear that if you pour a bottle of oil on someone's feet, it does not just stay on the top of the foot. It goes everywhere. It is messy and uncomfortable. The intimacy of Nicodemus. That in the end, we're not afraid to see one another as part of our love story. The longevity needed in the story of Ty and the loneliness in the story of Dorothy Day. I hope that you use these oils. I hope that you carry them with you. I hope that you buy the 6 other bottles still on the table. I hope you are brave enough to take a candle back to your church to change the temperature. You want to change the vibe of a vestry meeting? Make a pot of tea. Remind them that there are women trying to heal in this world, and what we're doing together is about that healing. We can do this. We can write this love story, and it's going to be a much better story if we write it together. Amen.
Amen.